All right, so last night on stream, someone asked me whether you should press this expertise button for Hua, and then the answer I gave was one, off the cuff, but two, slightly ranty. So I actually still stand by everything I said, but I wanted to make a video today so I could get a little bit more in depth into it, talk about the nuance of Hua. Okay, so first I'll say I think he's a good commander. I think if you invested in Sargon, it's a mistake. I don't think it's a mistake to invest in Hua. The point I was making is that I personally decided to skip him just because I would prefer William over Hua in a murder ball situation. And then when the new Cav commander comes out, I would rather probably just pair Nevsky with William and then the new commander with Joan, right? There is like a world where if the new commander is also providing buffs, utility, and rage boost, and that overlaps with William and makes him obsolete, then obviously I would have to go with Hua with the new commander, okay? But I think if you're giving me the option as far as Hua or William, I would actually stick with William at this point. That's just a personal preference. Now, Hua, I would actually group in kind of with the Attila Takeda category. He's way better, obviously. But even when I first started playing the game, the conventional wisdom was that Attila Takeda will get good reports, which is great, right? You want good reports, but he doesn't actually really help win Murder Ball. So like he's considered a selfish march just because he doesn't do any debuffs, he doesn't do any buffs, and Hua is actually in the same vein, right? Like the only thing he does that could kind of help the group, if you will, is that on his active skill, the target gets a 50% march speed reduction. Now, what makes Hua way better than Attila Takeda is his direct damage is super high, right? He actually has an active skill he launches, but also as you're stacking these kills, you're going to be able to heal, right, with expertise and keep your troop capacity a lot higher. So you could stay on the field a lot longer. And then I made a video about Sevoons at this point, maybe like a month, 2 months ago, right? The two factors I found that made a big difference for Sevoon is one, just how many troops you have. The more troops you have, the lower the Sevoon percentage, right? And that mechanism makes sense because if you're doing like a rally or a garrison where there's millions of troops and you have a hot, just like an equal Sevoon percentage for something that's like 200,000, people's hospitals are going to get filled instantly, right? So that makes sense that you don't want a Sevoon percentage for a higher troop count. And then when the troop count gets lower and lower, the Sevoon percentage you're going to take is going to be a lot higher. So essentially, whenever you take damage, part of that damage it becomes slightly wounded troops. The troop disappears, but it doesn't actually go to the hospital, and a part of that percentage goes to the hospital. That's your Sevoons. So we'll call that the Sevoon percentage. As the troop count is lower, the Sevoon percentage is going to go higher. So that's factor number one. The second factor is actually the differential in troops. Okay, so if the opponent has 10,000 and you have 10,000, right, there's going to be a set Sevoon percentage. But if the opponent has 10,000 and you have 100,000, so you have 10x the amount of troops the opponent has, the Sevoon percentage that both side takes is also going to both go up. But if you have a lot more troops, the side that has less troops is going to be dealing a lot less damage to you anyways. So even though you're taking a higher Sevoon percentage, it doesn't matter much. Whereas if you have less troops and you're taking a higher Sevoon percentage, that's really going to show up in the reports. Okay, so Hua, people fall in love with him because when his reports are good, they're going to look really, really good. And part of the reason is because most likely your side is winning and you're getting a lot of kills, so you're able to constantly heal. And as you're healing and keeping your troops high, you're going to be able to rack up these like crazy reports where you're getting a lot of Sevoons, where you're dishing out a lot of Sevoons and not taking a lot of Sevoons. Okay, so first question, one of the first ones I brought up on this video is whether you should press the expertise button. So at first glance, if you press the expertise button, you get 5% more defense, 5% more skill damage, and then when you heal, you actually double the healing factor from 1,500 to 3,000. Okay. Now the biggest challenge with this, the reason why people don't want to press it, is because when you trigger this autumn wind effect, so let's actually pull this up. Autumn wind. First line, it resets the rage of this commander's troops. Okay, so in general, the way that active skills work is the rage bar gets full, right? It's a little dots on the left side of the portrait. Primary commander launches an active skill on the next turn. There's going to be a second of downtime, and then a secondary commander is going to launch an active skill. Now, while there's that second of downtime, And when the secondary commander launches an active skill, the rage bar is still building up. If you kill the enemy with your secondary commander's active skill, that rage bar that you built up automatically goes away, right? So it's this thing where theoretically, even though you have a reduced rage cost, right, like 850, when you have the auto win effect, right, because you get 150 rage cost reduction, it will actually take you longer to launch a active skill again, just because you wasted like half a bar rage or more. Now, in my opinion, I still think you should press a button. Okay, the only time I think you shouldn't press a button is if you're using Joan Prime as a secondary commander. But if you're not going to press a button because you want to pair Huo with Joan Prime, I think you should just pair Joan with Nevsky and just put William behind Joan, and then you won't have to deal with that. So let's actually go over this active skill. I'll show you guys how this works in person. So right here I have a very low troop count for Nevsky, right? But as I attack this barb, and we'll look at Nevsky, right? You can see the rage bar filling on the top, on the left. So now once it's full, next turn, active skill, 1 second of downtime, active skill, 1 second of downtime, active skill. All right, so you can see I'm already firing the active skill again, right? If Joan's second Sacred Banner, right, so that's her fourth skill, you're gonna fire the active skill twice, but there's always gonna be a second of downtime in between. So if I fire the second active skill of Joan, the second time I'm doing the Sacred Banner, and that's what kills the enemy, I'll have 5 seconds of rage building on this bar. I think it's 5 seconds. That actually gets negated because it's going to reset the rage. So I made a comment, I think it was on Plato's pod or stream a week or two ago, how I think Joan as a secondary to Huo is how I would pair it. I take that back. That's a mistake. I knew this, but I didn't think about it as in depth as I did today. And I don't think you should pair Joan with Huo, just because you're essentially going to reset your rage, and you don't have that problem with Nevsky, right? Whereas with William, he brings a lot of utility. If you kill the enemy with the primary skill of Huo, let's go back to Huo, right? I think what you miss out on is whether you have well, in this case, you'll have the skill tree. You miss out on the rejuvenate, right? I think it's 60 rage for the first rejuvenate, but that's it. And you'll take that, right? Because if you think about like reduced rage cost, another way to think about it is it's actually better than say rejuvenate or any of these other skills that give you extra rage, because it's easy to over rage. A normal turn of white damage, you're going to get 103 rage on average. Right, and then with the other stuff, it's easy to actually hit that rage cap at 220. But if you reduce the rage cap, that's actually going to be better than giving you extra rage, if that makes sense, because you don't have to run into that problem of over raging. And technically, if you could do 220 rage per turn, and the rage cost is 850, you can actually hit that on the 4th turn, and then on the 5th turn, you launch your active skill. Okay, so kind of to put a bow on this or summarize this. If you're killing the enemy with Huo, that's actually ideal. When you're killing the enemy with the secondary commander and it triggers this auto win effect, that's less than ideal. If you're killing the enemy with the secondary commander and it's a second active skill of the secondary commander, so in this case Joan, then this actually becomes very not synergistic, or it takes away a lot from the effectiveness of this commander. Okay, so how to use Huo. Right now you should pair him with William, and what you want is to actually press this button, and then ideally, because Huo is going to be doing a much bigger damage factor than William, you're killing the enemy constantly with Huo's primary skill. This way you could constantly trigger this heal every 8 seconds, right? There is an 8-second cooldown, and it'll be able to keep your troop count high, which will allow you to want to keep your damage a lot higher, but also farm a lot of sev wounds, right? So personally, I decided to skip Huo just because I would prefer to have William's utility on the field, unless for some reason the new Cav commander's utility overlaps with William's utility. But if you guys ever want to do a comparison, go look at how Trajan buffs your troops versus how William buffs your troops. And then if you add in William's debuffs, where he takes away skill damage boost with his active skill, I can make an argument, and I think I would actually lean towards just taking William's utility over Trajan's utility. And people are running Trajan on the field as a 7th March, right? And William isn't just a buffing commander. He actually still has a 3-target AoE. Yes, it's a little bit on the lower side, but I think a lot of people are also discounting the instant proc that he has. If you add the instant proc and the 3-target AoE, his damage is actually more than respectable. It's even higher just by damage factor, because he doesn't actually bring any skill damage boost, but his damage is actually on par with and even better than some of these other commanders that we hold in high regard. Okay, so put everything together, I think you should press the expertise button, just because that's where a lot of the utility of Huo comes from. If you do pair him with Joan, then you actually run the risk of resetting the rage a lot more than you want to. So I don't think you should pair him with Joan. I think right now you should pair him with William if you have William, and just stick Joan behind Nevsky. And as far as the commander itself, would I take Huo or Nevsky? I would just take Nevsky. I already made a case for it in my video about Cavs about a month ago at this point. But do I think it's a good commander? Yes. And if you invested in him, is it like some big mistake? No. But personally, I would prefer William over Huo. I do think you should press this expertise button.